purified. Dharanaya. Meditation. Hata ashubha. One who has minimized the inauspicious qualities of material existence. Tat, him. Ikshaya, by looking on. Eva, simply. Ashu, immediately. Gata, having gone away. Yudha, from the arrows. Shamaha, fatigue. Nivrita, being stopped. Sarva, all. Indriya, senses. Vritti, activities. Vibramaha, being widely engaged. Tushtava, he prayed. Janyam, the material tabernacle. It means the body, actually. Vishrajan, while quitting. Janardana, to the controller of the living beings. So, translation. By pure meditation, looking at Lord Sri Krishna, he at once was freed from all material inauspiciousness and was relieved of all bodily pains caused by the arrow wounds. Thus all the external activities of his senses at once stopped, and he prayed transcendently to the controller of all living beings while quitting his material body. So, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The material body is a gift of the material energy, technically called illusion. Identification with the material body is due to forgetfulness of our eternal relationship with the Lord. For a pure devotee of the Lord, like Bhishma Deva, this illusion was at once removed as soon as the Lord arrived. Lord Krishna is like the sun, and the illusory external material energy is like darkness. In the presence of the sun, there is no possibility that darkness can stand. Therefore, just on the arrival of Lord Krishna, all material contamination was completely removed, and Bhishma Deva was able to be transcendently situated by stopping the activities of the impure senses in collaboration with matter. The soul is originally pure, and so also the senses. By material contamination, the senses assume the role of imperfection and impurity. By revival of contact with the Supreme Pure, Lord Krishna, the senses again become freed from material contaminations. Bhishma Deva attained all these transcendental conditions prior to his leaving the material body because of the presence of the Lord. The Lord is the controller and benefactor of all living beings. That is the verdict of all Vedas. He is the supreme eternity and living entity amongst all the eternal living beings. And he alone provides all necessities for all kinds of living beings. Thus he provided all facilities to fulfill the transcendental desires of his great devotee, Sri Bhishma Deva, who began to pray as follows. Okay. Kushuraya dharanaya hatta shubhas tad ikshayai vasu gata yudashamaha nivritti sarvendriya vritti vibramas tushtava janyam vrishad janjanardanam. So, Omagana. Timidanda Shagananjana Shlakaya Chakshur Meditam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So, reading this particular verse and purport, it appears that Bhishma was still contaminated up to the point when Krishna came, which is actually remarkable because he's a great devotee, Mahajan, Dwadasa Mahajan. And there is this thing called Jivan Mukta that you really don't have to wait until Krishna comes in front of you before you become completely pure. I mean, just like Srila Prabhupada came to this world, I mean, he wasn't having any material contamination, right? And he didn't have a material body. I mean, he had a physical body. Let's be very clear about that. The pure devotee has a physical body, does certain things like has veins and everything like that. Like Prabhupada went to the doctor. He had some interference in his ability to pass at one particular point. The doctor had to open that up so he could, anyway, pass. So it's definitely a physical body. I mean, Krishna doesn't have a physical body. But the pure devotee's body is spiritual. Now, how is it? How can it be physical and not material? So it's interesting to define these words in a specific way. By material, we mean something that is under the modes of material nature. And by physical, we mean something that has physical elements in it that's in the material world, but not under the modes of nature. Now, that may appear to be a very fine distinction, not under the mode. So Prabhupada's body was not under the modes of nature. He was situated in what we call Vishuddha Sattva. The three modes of material nature in this world are Tama, the mode of ignorance, and then passion, Raja, and Sattva. But even the Sattva in this world is actually a contaminated mode. It's not pure. It's just like, you're conditioned by the sense of happiness, according to Krishna and the Gita. But Vishuddha Sattva is just like completely dedicated to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is all of Prabhupada's senses, all of his activities, all of his consciousness was completely dedicated to Krishna. So even though Prabhupada was using a physical body in the service of Krishna, just like a devotee may use a car, the car is considered, that's the transformation. That when the material elements are used, we mentioned this verse yesterday, that Brahmarpanam Brahmahavya Brahmagno Brahmanahutam Brahmatena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhinam. That something is used in Krishna's service, it becomes spiritualized. So, the question is raised that if Grandfather Bhishma was a pure devotee, why is it described that just now, at this particular juncture, he's freed from material inauspiciousness? And so on. We can try to explain that. There's a whole story regarding Grandfather Bhishma where he made a big mistake. And that big mistake was the cause of his being subjected to material inauspiciousness. So there's no question of material auspiciousness. Actually, Lord Chaitanya was saying it's just illusion to consider something materially auspicious. He said, he was saying that in regard to his interactions with Sanatana Goswami. Sanatana Goswami had just come to join Lord Chaitanya, and he had gone through the Jatakhanda forest to see Lord Chaitanya. And going through the Jatakhanda forest, he didn't drink properly, or actually drank the water in the contaminated lakes or rivers or something like that. And he had this, we would consider inauspicious signs on his body. He had these sores. They were oozing pus. Yuck. See, we're actually in Maya because we're saying yuck. That means we're not spiritually qualified. Isn't it? Like a pure devotee. Anyway, I'll get to the point. So then, ultimately, when he got there, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was forcibly embracing him. There's a story in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he was forcibly embracing him, and the pus was actually going on Lord Chaitanya's body. And Sanatana Goswami was feeling so guilty about it, he thought, well, better to jump under the cart of Lord Jagannath during the Rath Yatra and commit suicide. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu caught wind of what he was planning. And he said, you can't please Krishna by committing suicide, plus your body belongs to me. I want to execute so many different missions in Vrindavan with your body, so you can't destroy someone else's property. So eventually, after some tests, because Sanatana Goswami one time was tested by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Chaitanya called him to a particular place in Jagannath Puri, and there were only two ways to reach Lord Chaitanya. One way was by the Singadwara gate, and the other way was by the hot sands on the beach. And so Sanatana Goswami took the hot sands on the beach because he didn't want to come in contact or come near any of the pujaris who were going to serve Lord Jagannath, even though the hot sands caused his feet to have blisters on them. And Lord Chaitanya was very pleased. And then he revealed to Sanatana Goswami why he embraced Sanatana Goswami. And he said, first of all, if he considered sores to be inauspicious or whatever, or auspicious things, he wouldn't be properly qualified as a sannyasi. He said, a sannyasi has to see pebbles, stones, gold, everything was the same. Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmani Gavyastiti Shuni Chaiva Swapakicha Pandita Samadarshana. A learned and gentle sage, even a Brahmin has to consider these things equally. He's Samadarshi. Like the first quality of a Brahmin is Sama. Sees things equally. So he's not thinking that pus is disgusting and gold is beautiful. It's hard to come to that consciousness. I tell you, I don't know if I'm on that consciousness right now. If I see some pus or stools, ooh. If I see a nice car, I go, ooh. So that's a really high platform. So Lord Chaitanya was revealing that he didn't see any difference. And then, of course, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave the ultimate answer. He said he embraced Sanatana Goswami because he considered Sanatana Goswami to be like his child, a loving relationship. So when the mother embraces the child, even though there's different bodily fluids that exude, emanate from the child, the mother's not thinking, yuck. She's thinking, very nice. Sandalwood pulp. Robert actually said that. Sandalwood pulp, what that is. Chandan, Anyway. So that's the point of like auspicious or inauspicious. So a pure devotee doesn't see things like that. So getting back to the point of Grandfather Bhishma, basically, yes, it was described here that he had once was freed from material inauspiciousness, and there was some illusion and everything like that. So why is that? Well, let's go back a little bit in the history of Grandfather Bhishma, why he became Grandfather Bhishma, and enacted all these pastimes on the earth planet. And it's actually a pastime. It was all arranged by Krishna, too. Another point is that Krishna was arranging this, and being a pure devotee, Krishna put him in different circumstances. So apparently it was material inauspiciousness, but it was arranged by Yogamaya to teach us certain things. All right, so what happened was originally before Grandfather Bhishma became Grandfather Bhishma, he was one of the heavenly Vasus. There were 8 of them. And his name was Jao, D-Y-A-U. And as Jao, he was not a brahmachari like he was on the earth planet. He was married, and all the Vasus, they were all married. They're actually great sages in the heavenly planets. And his wife wanted the milk from the Kamadhenu of Vashishta Muni. And so Vashishta Muni, being a great pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, had this nice Kamadhenu. Kamadhenu means a cow that can produce any quantity of anything you want. Desire cow, basically Kamadhenu. So what he did, instead of asking Vashishta Muni for the cow, at his wife's behest, actually the wife wanted it. I'm remembering more of the story. The wife wanted the cow and the milk because she had a friend who was here on earth. Because the demigods don't need the milk of the Kamadhenu because they were already have drunk this Amrit, You understand? But she had an Earth friend, one of the girls on Earth, and she wanted to give the Earth friend some Kamadenu milk so the Earth friend could remain young and beautiful. It's like the fountain of youth. You know, in American history, there was actually a great explorer named Ponce de Leon. I don't know if any of you know this story. He had heard that there was a fountain of youth in America. So no one heard his name before? So he was from Portugal. So he took a boat all the way across the ocean to Florida. He thought there was a fountain of youth, but he didn't find it. Because he heard the rumor. You know, you hear these rumors, just like in Fiji, last time I was there was a rumor that there was a spring that you know, the special water you take, it would cure any disease. So you make a rumor like that, and then people just like flock to the place, even though. So even this time, the devotees went to see it. And when they were near Lambasa. Anyway, so this lady, the wife of Zhao, she wanted to give her friend some of the milk so she could remain young like that, you know, fountain of youth. And so they stole a desire cow of Vashishta Muni. And Vashishta Muni got really upset, obviously, when your cow was stolen. And he cursed the Vasus in such a way, because they committed an offense. And actually, when we find the sage's curse, it's to the benefit of the persons being cursed, like when Narada Muni cursed Manigriva and Nalakuvara. It was for their benefit. So even with Zhao's benefit, because ultimately he would come in contact with Krishna and have so much great association. So anyway, so he was cursed, and all the Vasus actually were cursed, because they all took part in it. And they were cursed to come down to the Earth planet and take human births. So you may say, that's not a curse, you know, that's pretty nice. But they were cursed in that way. And so they were really upset. They went to Vashishta and said, you know, please forgive us. And Vashishta said, okay, I'll forgive you to a certain extent, that 7 of you will have a very short lifetime. You will die immediately after you're born. And 1 of you will live the lifetime that's the accumulated lifetime of the other 7. Because Zhao was the one actually most responsible for it. He was the one who had to take that full 7 extra lifetimes on the Earth planet, or 8 altogether. All right, in the meantime, there was a king who went to some of you may know the story, I mean it's a common story. The king who went to the heavenly planets, his name was Mahabish. And Mahabish was going to a dancing performance at Indra's assembly. And when he went to a dancing performance at Indra's assembly, what happened is that he happened to look inappropriately at Ganga Devi. When the wind sort of blew her skirt up, he just stared at her. And the other demigods, being a little bit more intelligent, looked away. And Lord Brahma cursed him to come down to the Earth planet. And he was real upset at that. He left this assembly of Indra and he was just thinking, oh my God, what did I do? And as he was leaving, he ran into Ganga Devi, and she said, actually, I like you too. And so she said, you know, I'll come down too, we can get married. And then Ganga Devi ran into the Vasus who had been cursed. And they said, you know, we're not going to take any ordinary mother. We don't want one of these earth mothers. You should become our mother. You know, so everything works out together. It's all arrangement in Krishna's past. It's all Mahabharata story. And so, yeah, so she agreed, and they said, what, we have one request, that you kill each one of us right after we're born, except for the last one. You can keep the last one. She said, okay, no problem. So anyway, so Mahavish goes down to the earth planet. He becomes Shantanu. And one day, he is actually by the Ganges, and being by the Ganges, he sees this beautiful girl come out of the river, the Ganges personified, and he immediately says, Kshatriyas were like that. They said, will you marry me? Because you didn't have a red dot in the forehead. That's the protection ladies should have. They should get an LED lamp. You understand? You don't have one.
I'm going to work, so I
At least you have a ring or something to protect yourself. Okay, good. And just like in the West, they check out the ring on the finger. In India, they check out the dot. So.
Also the chain.
Oh, the chain, yeah, Mangalsutra, yeah, Mangalsutra, yeah. So you gotta have a chain, a little heart on the chain. Yeah. Well, yeah, sindoor, yeah, that's right, the sindoor. So, yes, you get fluorescent paint. So anyway, so he sees Ganga Devi and he says, "Will you marry me?" And she says, "Yeah, no problem. We have a deal. You never argue with me." And he's so much in love. People in love get stupid. There's just so much in love. Like, even in Fiji, when people have trouble in their marriage, I say, was yours a love marriage? And inevitably they say, yeah, it was a love marriage. The woman is 20 years older than the man, so it happens sometimes. I said, did your parents arrange it? No way. Isn't it? Yeah, the love marriage and arranged marriage. So anyway, even sometimes if the guru arranges the marriage, it goes bad. But anyway, it's Kali Yuga. Nobody does. People don't have this sense of duty anymore. That you stick to something, you make a deal, or not a deal. You make a promise and you stick to it. That's all. Unless the person becomes an absolute rakshasa and starts eating human beings, then you don't have to stick to it. So, anyway, so they get married, and as we know, that one kid after the other was drowned in the Ganges, and eventually, grandfather, Bhishma was born. He wasn't grandfather when he was born, obviously. Bhishma was born. And he was taken away by his mother for training and everything like that. And he got trained by Parshuram, his spiritual martial arts spiritual master. And in this way, he was fulfilling, or his existence was fulfilling the curse that he had gotten. And while he was on the Earth planet, he made a number of mistakes, which we mentioned yesterday, we're going to speak about today. And the main mistake he made was being attached to the details of Dharma rather than the essence of Dharma. It's very interesting. Oh, we got an Aussie here. There's one thing called principles, and the other thing is details. Principles means aspects of religion or dharma that are inseparable. That's called, sometimes we call that siddhanta. Something that is, or tattva. Tattva, siddhanta, all these things are, like the word tattva, it's basically similar, that which is, that's what, like tat, that in Sanskrit. So it means something that you can't separate. It's dharma, it's like dharma. What's the inseparable quality of water, like Prabhupada said, is liquidity. And of course, when water is in its natural state, not unnatural like ice. So the dharma of the living entity is, the Sanatana Dharma, Jivera Swarupa Hoy, Nitya Krishna Das. But how that dharma is realized by the living entity may differ according to time, place, and circumstance. For example, in different yugas, the process of realizing one's eternal dharma changes. Satya Yuga, it's meditation, and then, Treta Yuga, opulent sacrifices, and Dwapara Yuga, big temple worship. And in Kali Yuga, it's chanting Hare Krishna. So those are the details, which are different than the Dharma, or different than the Siddhanta, different than the Tattva. So one has to understand the difference. Whereas Grandfather Bhishma, he thought Dharma, like truthfulness, for example, is a detail of Dharma. It's not eternal detail of Dharma, or, eternal principle. Let's say eternal principle of Dharma. It's important, because by cultivating truthfulness, you're cultivating the mode of goodness in this world. But sometimes even that detail has to be sacrificed for Dharma. Or keeping one, and I'll give you an example that is given by Grandfather Bhishma in the Mahabharata. The example Grandfather Bhishma gives at the end, when he realizes he made some big mistakes, is that, let's say, some dacoits are attacking a family, chasing after a family. And this family takes shelter in a great sage's ashram. And the dacoits go to the great sage and say to the great sage, "My dear great sage, where are this family?" And the great sage says, "I cannot tell a lie. Family's right there in my back room." And the dacoits kill the family. So in that case, it's more dharmic to tell a lie than to tell the truth, because the Dharma is protection. You understand? That's actually the principle of Dharma. The details are telling the truth. You understand the difference between the two? So therefore, Grandfather Bhishma, another aspect or detail of Dharma is to keep your promises. So Grandfather Bhishma considered that detail to be a principle. There's a difference. To be a principle that can never be violated. You always tell the truth, or you always keep your promise, even if some lady is being attacked, who happen to be Draupadi. Yeah, you just keep your promise. Doesn't matter. I will never violate my word. I'm Grandfather Bhishma. Of course, there must have been a little pride there, too, just like we mentioned yesterday in regard to Yudhisthira Maharaj. That Yudhisthira Maharaj was very proud of being telling the truth all the time. In fact, even when Krishna himself ordered him to lie, then he refused. And because of that, his chariot touched the ground from that point forward. So that was stupidity. Anyway, stubbornness and false pride. So that was Grandfather Bhishma's mistake. Also, he made some other mistakes, too. But I said all these mistakes were made because he had been cursed, He had been cursed. That was the original mistake. He listened to his wife. Anyway. There's nothing wrong with listening to your wife, but you have to have... Sorry about that one. I couldn't resist that one. So, but there's nothing wrong, and there's nothing wrong with listening to your husband, but you have to have some sense of judgment, too. That's the point. That you cannot be blind following in either way. And you shouldn't be controlled, by guilt trips or threats or anything like that. You should just do the right thing. So all of us should learn from that. If, let's say, a wife is married and the husband says, "Go get me some meat." It's not that the wife should say, "Oh, my dharma is to serve my husband." No, it's not. Your dharma, that's a detail. And if the detail is not in line with the principle, the detail could be sacrificed. Like, for example, when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Jagannath Puri, one day Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya invited him over for prasadam. And when he was eating prasadam, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's son-in-law, Moga, he criticized Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for eating as much as like 10 men. And so Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya started running after his son-in-law with a stick to beat him. And then even after that, of course he wasn't able to catch him because he was just an old man, and Moga was a young man. But after that, he said to his daughter that my daughter is now a widow, she has no husband. Because he had offended Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that, you have one detail that, wife and husband shouldn't be separated, let's say like that. Wife should always listen to the husband sometimes. That's funny, always sometimes. So, but then there's a higher principle. And that higher principle was illustrated by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya when he said, my daughter is no longer married, she's a widow, she doesn't have a husband. And so Amoga, of course, the story has a happy ending, as all stories about Lord Chaitanya do. Because this Amoga, because of his offense, got cholera, and he was lying on bed getting ready to die, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to him, gave him mercy because he was associated with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, understanding that if he died it would cause distress or even death to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So he put his hand on Amoga's chest and says that such envy does not exist in the heart of a devotee or a Brahmin. Get up, Amoga. And Amoga got up and he started chanting Hare Krishna. We should try that in the hospital. Someone has a heart problem. Give up your envy and chant Hare Krishna. In the ICU, we can do that. Everybody got, and he got up and he started slapping his face. He says, with this mouth, I blasphemed you. So he had this repentance too. So then of course, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's daughter, Sati, was again allowed to be married to her husband. So, in other words, the point I'm making, these are not absolute principles. Sometimes people take absolute principles, absolute details, absolute details as absolute, and they're not. They're not absolute. They're details, and they have to be seen whether they assist the principles. So Grandfather Bhishma made that mistake, and then he also made the mistake of, as Prabhupada said, eating food cooked by non-devotees, which is interesting. Of course, his non-devotees were pretty demoniac. Anyway, of course, it's not that Duryodhana cooked the food. Yeah. It was Duryodhana's cook. And, definitely it was not offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead as prasadam. So, and Prabhupada gave that as an important principle when he first started ISKCON. He said a devotee should not eat food cooked by non-devotees. But nowadays, of course, people are much, much more lenient in the application. They just say, well, we're hungry. Let's go to McDonald's and get fries. So, even though they're cooked with the same hands or the same oil that, chicken may be cooked in or something else may be cooked in. Or let's go to, you have this chain here called Subway?
Subway.
Yeah, let's go to Subway and get a vegetarian sandwich. So you may think that you can do that, but it will contaminate the consciousness. And so Grandfather Bhishma's consciousness became so contaminated that it's mentioned in the full Mahabharata that he became possessed by demons. Not only was his consciousness contaminated, but it was like demoniac possession. Like one of these movies you see, like where a demon possesses you. And that was brought out in this encounter that Duryodhana had. Once upon a time, Duryodhana was captured by the Gandharvas, and he was rescued by Arjuna, who was actually friends with the chief Gandharva Chitraratha. So he felt so bad. Kshatriyas have some pride, even if you're a demon Kshatriya. And he felt so bad that, he had to depend on the Pandavas to rescue him. he got ready to commit suicide, and he sat down in meditation to leave his body. And when he sat down in meditation to leave his body, the demons took him out of his body and gave him a pep talk. You know, like you have before a soccer game. You know, they take the players and they just like say, "Come on, team, you know, we can win, even though we're fighting the All Blacks, you know." I know that's your team. And so they said, "You know, we brought you to Earth for a special mission, and we're going to help you. We're going to possess Bhishma. We're going to possess others like Dronacharya, Kripacharya, and others who were actually great devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They knew that Krishna was God. So we're going to possess them." And so, anyway, so just from taking impure food, all of them were able to be possessed. And so Bhishma, he was definitely possessed, and after a while, you know, he came to his senses, but still there was some contamination here, according to this verse. And so what we see in this particular pastime, it's not a criticism of Bhishma, although apparently he did so many things wrong, is that Krishna is teaching us the importance of not offending sages, and not offending devotees of the Lord, and secondly, be very careful of our association, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stated when he was asked about the first principle of devotional service, basically, and he didn't talk about the four regular principles, because he was mainly dealing with high-class people. When you're dealing with high-class people, you don't really have to tell them to stop eating meat, fish, and eggs, and no intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling. I mean, sometimes when I'm giving an initiation, it's kind of embarrassing. There's an older lady who's never done any of those things in her whole life, and she's like 85 years old. What are the four regulated principles? No illicit sex. She doesn't even know what they are. Actually, one recent initiation, one person, I said, "What are the four regular principles?" He said, "No sex." And he was married, and I said, "But we need Krishna conscious children. How can you do that?" And chastise him for getting the regular principles wrong. Anyway, so Lord Chaitanya was speaking to high class people, getting back to the point, and he said the first principle is a satsanga chage vaishnavachar, to avoid bad association. And it's hard, you know, like sometimes we have friends before we became devotees who were not just great association, but, and, you know, of course we want to keep friendship with them. We don't want to just like reject people, but we have to keep our purity too. And it's not ritual purity. Sometimes people say, "What's this a ritual? You know, purity, ritual purity." You know, it's like, you know, taking a bath 3 times a day, you know, which is good. And doing achman, you know, it's interesting you do achman before you meet with your friends, anyway. Or after you meet with your friends. You take around some Ganges water and keep spraying yourself. "Hello, John." That would be too much. And so, actually, I did something like that with my grandmother before she passed away. When I snuck some Radhakund water in her coffee. When she turned her back, it was right before she passed away. Anyway, that was out of mercy, hopefully. So, you know, it's important to keep this purity, you know, because it's in the, you know, little things like, you know, hearing music that's not Krishna, or hearing the chanting even from the lips of someone who is not Krishna conscious can really pollute the mind. It's really interesting how easily the mind can be polluted by the modes of nature and things you come in contact with. So I think that's one of the main lessons Grandfather Bhishma is teaching us here, or his activities taught us, to be very, very careful in dealing with Krishna's material energy, and also to understand the principles of Dharma. and don't be attached so many times to the details. I mean, I'll just give an example because it's a little controversial. Like, recently, there was anyway, now I'll get in trouble. So recently in ISKCON, our deity worship ministry said you can't have, public abhisheks of the deities. So I was thinking about that. And, in one sense, it's true. And it said also you can't do Julin anymore with the public. And I was just thinking, weighing the different, weighing, the Dharma, just thinking what is more important, what is less important. Of course, it's really important to weigh details so you can see, which one supports Dharma more, which one, what is the ultimate purpose. And then I was thinking the ultimate purpose of having temples is to bring people, not so that we just sit and ring bells. That's not probably. Prabhupada said that's anyway. That's Ganesh Adhikari. Just sit in a temple and ring bells. And Prabhupada has this one nice poem called Vrindavan Bhajan, which he sort of like really lets the Babajis have it. Right between the eyes. I don't know if you've heard this poem. You can look it up. It's called Vrindavan Bhajan. Prabhupada wrote it in Vrindavan, and then he said that someone who's thinking they can become Krishna conscious just by staying in Vrindavan and chanting. They're eating the mind's bananas was the expression Prabhupada gave. Which means they're crazy, to translate it into English. So the whole purpose of the temple is to preach Krishna consciousness, because there are injunctions actually that one shouldn't even worship the deities in front of non-devotees. That's in the Nectar of Devotion, actually. And so if we did that, then basically it'd be just like a few people. And of course, there are already a few people in Mangalarti, but that wouldn't change Mangalarti. But anyway, but as far as the Sunday program, when you got a lot of people, or Janmashtami, when you got people just pouring in, you can't, in Sydney, you can't even find parking spaces for anybody. And they have to just stand in line to get darshan of the deities. We just have to just check everybody out before they come in, Do you chant 16 rounds? You following the 4 regular principles? Are you dressed in a burqa? Covering your head. Anyways. We have a check, a bouncer at the door, like they would. And then, everybody else can get prasadam in the parking lot, If we were to follow that injunction, that's what we would do. But why don't we follow? Prabhupada said we take a chance. And we bring everyone to see the deities, even Radha and Krishna deities. Radha Krishna is a very high standard. Of course, Lord Jagannath goes out. Everybody gets his association during the Rath Yatra. That's the only time people like me could see Lord Jagannath. The rest of the time we're banned.
I hear that it's been different now.
Well, no, they passed a rule. It hasn't been applied yet. There was a court, but let's see if the Pandas actually agree to follow the courts. Yeah, they got their own laws. It's completely. Yeah, there was a court order like that.
Yeah.
But it hasn't changed. We'll find out when it changes. Anyway, so you have these injunctions. So I was thinking, what should we do in this particular case? And then I was seeing, like in Suva we tried not having the Abhishek for Janmashtami. People just left the temple room. They didn't stay for the kirtan. They just went, hey, where's the food? They came, took darshan of the deities with them. And then for Radhastami, I thought, well, it didn't work in Janmashtami. And we lost people. And then on Radhastami, I told them, well, do it again. Just not with the temple deities, obviously. But someone's home deities, which normally have a very low standard anyway. I mean, people have home deities where they're not even second initiated. Nowadays, everybody has deities. Even though Prabhupada really wasn't in favor of that. Prabhupada, he wanted everyone to worship the deities in the temple. But anyway, whatever. So, and then we did it, and then people were in ecstasy, and they stayed for like 2 hours of kirtan. And it was, and they also swung the deities. Julian, we had that. And these are just people's homes deities, not the temple deities, obviously. And it was very successful. So I'm just looking, if we can engage more people in Krishna's service, maybe you have to make some adjustments like that, because there's, principles and details. And, there's details like sannyasis shouldn't cross oceans. I'm crossing so many oceans, I forget how many oceans I've crossed. The only ocean I haven't crossed is the Arctic Ocean. The only continent I haven't been is Antarctica, basically. So, and Prabhupada, crossed oceans. Prabhupada did so many things, and then Prabhupada was even showing ladies how to wear saris, because nobody in the West knew how to wear a sari, so Prabhupada had to really dress them, basically. I would not do that, but anyway, because I don't know how to wear saris. It would be a mess if I tried. So the point is, this is really an important point in presenting Krishna consciousness. Utility is the principle. Books of the base, and purity is the force. That's a principle. It's not a detail. Purity is the force. That's the principle. It's not that you can be impure and make devotees. Just like start smoking ganja, or can be giving out kava at your. In Fiji, you do that. Not we don't do that, but they do it in the mandalis. Like every night, Ram Kata, Jai Ram, Shri Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Jai Kava, Jai Kava. Shri Shri Kava. It's like part of the ritual. It's become part of the ritual, isn't it? So, that, because purity is the force. You can't do something like that in the name of utility, because you're destroying the purity. So as long as you stick to these principles, purity is the force, books of the basis, preaching sense like that, then you take some mature discrimination, but you can spread Krishna consciousness. So, yeah. So that's what Grandfather Bhishma didn't understand. So anyway, so we learned all these lessons from Grandfather Bhishma's interactions, beginning with his offending a great sage, Vashishta Muni. So any questions or comments? So that's why it says here that Grandfather Bhishma had material inauspiciousness, and it says he became purified upon seeing Krishna. Because you can become purified before you see Krishna. You just have to chant his holy names. It's not you have to wait till Krishna just comes and says, hello. Here I am, high five. Or you hear Krishna's flute. You don't have to wait. You can be unpurified just by chanting Krishna's name. Krishna's present in his holy name. And Grandfather Bhishma had to wait because he had impurities. And ultimately, as they said, this is a pastime. He's a Mahajan, and he's teaching us these lessons by his impurities, or so-called impurities. I mean, I'm pretty sure this. I know it's under the influence of Yogamaya, because Krishna arranged that all these people would come to the Earth planet. But there's lessons to be learned. Like in Arjuna's illusion, not being willing to fight, that's a lesson to be, he's showing us something, he's giving us a lesson to be learned. And that was under the influence of Yogamaya. Arjuna was never under the influence of Mahamaya. It was under Yogamaya, which apparently was displayed as Mahamaya. Okay, any other questions? Any questions? Questions? Comments? Yeah.
So that means the devotee should be cautious that even whoever is leading the kirtan should be advancing Krishna consciousness.
Well, it should be at least chanting 16 rounds, following the 4 regular principles, and committed to Srila Prabhupada's mission. I mean, it's not that we have some advancement test. You know, are you free from lust, anger, and greed? Let's test you before you could lead kirtan. And you insult the guy to see if... No, I think the standard is that they must be strictly following the process of Krishna consciousness.
That is chanting successful.
Well, the four regular
Yeah.
principles too. You know, and not have too many girlfriends like that. I mean, I remember one time, this is years ago, I went to Vrindavan, and the person who was chanting during the 24-hour kirtan was living with a girlfriend in Vrindavan. And I was thinking, what? You know, what's happening here? It's just not the right standard.
So it does affect the consciousness of the people who are...
Oh, of course. Because they're not following Prabhupada's directions.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with their girlfriend. But but they're not, you know, they're not following the four principles. And you hear from them, yes, it will affect the consciousness adversely. Because you have to be connected. Just that we often give the example, it's like when you're dealing with electrical things, there's a process for connecting yourself to the powerhouse. You know, even if you have one wire wrong, you won't get a shock actually. But if you have one wire wrong, there's no juice coming out. And if you get it wrong, it could have adverse effects too. You know, you go to something called a neutral, and that may be a hot wire. You go to ground yourself, you know, and you get 1,000 volts of electricity, and you know, it's not a very good thing. So so at least they have to be connected some way or other by following the regular, if they're going to lead in the temple. Prabhupada, of course, when he was preaching Krishna consciousness, one time he let this non-devotee, Allen Ginsberg, chant. But that was, Prabhupada could do something like that, you know. And because Allen Ginsberg was famous, everybody knew him in the whole world, all the young people were following him, and he was one of the, he was a drug acharya. But Prabhupada, I mean, someone like Prabhupada can do things like that. And I don't do things like that, you know. And it's not that Prabhupada said people got benefit from hearing Allen Ginsberg chant. He said Prabhupada used them to attract people so that they could hear from Prabhupada. You know, so you can just like put some famous Bollywood actress out at the door of the kirtan or something. Like Rani Mukherjee. Well, she's a devotee. She is a devotee. Yes, she's a devotee. Anyway, so I shouldn't mention her name. Or for the women, you can have Vivek Oberoi, Akshay. I told you the way I met Akshay Kumar. Yeah, he had his guards around him. So to bring him over to he was staying next to me. In order to meet him, I sent one of the young girls over to try to. I said, bring him over here. So the young girl went. She gradually walked towards me, and he followed her. And, hi, here's a Bhagavad Gita. And he liked the Bhagavad Gita. He put it on his Facebook page. So anyway, Prabhupada could do things like that. We should be careful who's giving class and who's, you know, and the following Prabhupada, they have the dress standard of Prabhupada too, like in the temple. Like you don't really want someone giving class and they have a big beard or something on, because it's not Prabhupada's standard. I mean, they're not violating the regulated principles, it's just not. You know, they're representing Prabhupada. So, I mean, for other preaching engagements, you know, I would have no problem with a preaching engagement where I had to wear Western clothes if it was necessary, but not in the temple. In the temple, there's certain standards too. And, you know, I just always eat food cooked by devotees. I mean, go for a long airplane flight, and the stewardesses keep asking me, "Aren't you going to eat anything? Aren't you going to drink anything?" You know, they're just like really worried about me. I said no. Not gonna. And they said, "Oh my God, you're right." And I always have my little bag and my little container of water because I don't want to drink non-devotee water. So that's a joke. No, actually, the water, unless you get the water, you know, the water in the airplane sometimes is very impure. Not the bottled water, but sometimes they take it from
Yeah,
the,
yeah.
they have this big tank or something like that, and it's shown has a lot of bacteria in it. Yeah, it can be very dangerous. So I always bring my own water. So, any other questions? Any questions?
But there's some Sutta installed that is taken out for procession, and we have Jagannath Buddha's Buddha.
Yeah.
I saw in Srila Prabhupada's Amrita, Prabhupada chastised the devotees when they took out Jagannath.
Yeah.
So should we have a separate deity for procession, or?
No, because Prabhupada chastised them because they took Jagannath out at the wrong time. It wasn't Rath Yatra. And they actually just put him on the ground there, on a piece of cloth. You know, Prabhupada said, the real context of that story is, Prabhupada said only during Rath Yatra do they come out. And in Jagannath Puri, they let everyone bathe during the Snani Yatra. But that's Lord Jagannath. Radhakrishna is a higher standard. But, you know, Prabhupada didn't want them coming out at any old time. Only Rath Yatra do they actually come off the temple, out of the temple. So that was the context of that particular chastisement. Anyway, with deity worship, one has to be careful. You know, I'm extremely careful with deity worship. But I want people to join the Krishna conscious movement. And I saw the joy in people's faces when they could swing Krishna.
So that's the higher principle.
For me, that's a higher principle. And that, like I said, it may be controversial. I'm saying this, you know, Shinga Kabacha will probably kill me. He's already angry with me because I put a wig on Hanuman, so. You know, our Temple of Silver, we put a wing on him because I don't want a bald monkey. Yeah, I say it. What do you want? So, I take that responsibility because I saw how joyful people became when they were engaged. And for me, like if you do in Julian Yatra, and they're just swinging the deities on the altar, and people can't swing, it's just like, it's like telling people you're just a bunch of malechas, you know. Only us real people, you know, real devotees can do it. So it requires some discrimination, and I'm here in this world to preach. Like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was ready to give meat to the Britishers, you know, who were coming to visit. And he was questioned one time, I forget the exact quote from him, but he said, I spent lifetimes trying to preach. And, you know, in other words, I'm not going to, you know, I'm going to do what's necessary to bring people to Krishna consciousness. So, you know, I think that's our mission. We have to be mission-oriented. Our mission is to bring people to Krishna. I mean, of course, we can't give up our principles in doing so. You know, there's a fine line. But our mission is, you know, the more people, the better. Let's bring them. That's what really impressed Prabhupada. The more people we engage, and the people come to our temple, they're joyful. Another thing, the temple should have nice prasadam when people come. And the devotees should serve the guests, not that the guests should serve the devotees. You know, well, that's horrible. Why should the devotees eat first? They're eating prasadam every day, you know. You know, what they should be happy when people who aren't in Krishna consciousness or first time come. They should be ecstatic. I mean, when I joined the movement, we weren't allowed to take prasadam until the guests had gotten their prasadam. And if there was anything left over, then we got a chance to eat. Otherwise, no. And we were told to sit down between the guests, you sit in lines, and talk to them. And people like that, Here's the host. I mean, if I go to someone's house, and if they eat before me, like I went to see Krishna Chandra yesterday, and so I went to their house, and so what would happen if they let me in and they said, Maharaj, we're eating first, and you could have whatever we left over.
That's right.
I mean, just like, what kind of etiquette is that? The host eats first, and the guest watches while the host eats. It's very, it's very bad. And it really shows a lack of good manners, even common etiquette, not even Krishna consciousness. And then you want to make more devotees, you got to just treat the guests like God when they come. Thank you for coming. Here's a free book for you. Here's this, what's your email address? What are you interested? Why did you come here? Questions. Open-ended questions actually are good. Not that I'm going to tell you about Krishna, whether you like it or not. Here we go. Do you eat meat? Yes. Have you ever heard about Yamaraj? No. Well, here's his picture. Here's where you're going. So, anyway, that's it. So, I think we have to end now because we have to get to work. All right, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai.